I can do it.
I did it.
Oh, you got it.
I did it. And then Blake, you're gonna have to help me get it afterwards.
Oh, yeah, I'll extract it after. Don't worry.
Okay,
Take care of that
thank
part.
you.
Thank you, Blake.
No problem.
All right, so why don't we go around and do some introductions? Perhaps starting with Elon.
Hi, everybody. This is Elon Schultz. I'm the Senior Health Deputy for Supervisor Kuehl. Tessa?
Yeah. And hi, folks. Tessa Charnovsky. I am Supervisor Kuehl's District Director covering this area. And as I've said to folks who came on early, I'm at my office right now, and I'm wearing a headset for the first time, and I do not have a camera. But this is not me being shy. But it's not my fault that I don't have a camera. Okay, Jessica.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Let me turn my camera on. There we are. Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Orellana, District Director for the Supervisor, and I oversee communities in the East San Fernando Valley. Thank you.
And then Blake.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Blake Clayton, Supervisor Sheila Kuehl's office. I am a field representative working with Tessa out of our West Valley Mountain Communities office. Onto, do you want to go?
Lindsay Davis with Public Health. You guys know me.
Yeah. Okay. How about starting with you, Mary?
Mary Blair from CAG, the Community Advisory Committee from the beginning.
Okay, and then Lori. Hey, Lori.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lori Avassian from the Community Advisory Group.
Okay, and then Andrew and team.
Sure. So Andrew, Craig, and Brian, all Community Advisory Group members.
Hello.
And then I see a Bruce.
Bruce Hector, Community Advisory Group.
Great. So I think that's everybody. And oh, I see a Brandy.
Hello.
Brandy. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Brandy Grace. I'm with the Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council.
Great. Thank you so much. I am going to hand this over to Elon to begin the discussion.
Hi, thank you, everybody, again, for making the time to meet with us. So I think most of you have been able to join on the calls that we've had in the past between our office and the CAG and the CAG members. And, excuse me. During those calls, we've discussed the two main requests that the CAG has made. The first one being to have the county issue a subpoena against the SoCal so that they could get the full list of chemicals that were on site and that may have been released during both the gas leak itself and then also in the various attempts to plug the gas leak. We have had those conversations about the subpoena. We've had follow-up conversations between 3rd District staff, County Council, and then we discussed all of it with the supervisor as well. In addition, we have also discussed the second main request from the CAG, which is for the county to stop the issuance of the RFP, or at this point, because the RFP has been released, to pull it back, the RFP for the health assessment study. And the main request there from the CAG was for the county to stop the RFP from moving forward and reissue the RFP with the new requirement that the health study RFP respondents include a plan to do physical assessments of the residents. We've talked that basically the CAG is stating that it's the CAG's desire for any health study to be commissioned to include physical medical assessments of all residents. We've had further conversations between the 3rd District and DPH to get a better sense of what the SOC, the Scientific Oversight Committee, believes and what about the value of such medical exams or physical health assessments, and also to get a better sense of how DPH is actually administering the RFP and the health study process. The CAG requested to meet with Supervisor Kuehl to discuss these issues, and as I responded via email today, the supervisor has asked her staff, that's me, Tessa, Jessica, and Blake, to have those conversations directly with the CAG, and that she unfortunately is unable to meet with the CAG members directly. She has asked, that is Supervisor Kuehl has asked our staff to respond back to the CAG with her opinions on these requests. Are there any questions so far, or can I go ahead and explain what the supervisor's thoughts are on these issues?
Elon, this is Andrew. Can I clarify 2 small points, please?
Please.
Just for the record. For the record, the communities and the CAG's request, and again, the CAG is just an arm of the community, for the clinical evaluations is not new. That has been a day 1 request. I just want to be very clear. Okay, your synopsis was pretty close, but that request is from day 1.
And it goes back 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, understood and accepted and agreed. I did not, I was only speaking from the time at which our office got involved in this conversation, which, as you know, was only several months ago. So I am not arguing as to when such a request was made by the community. I'll accept that it was made from the start. I was simply saying that by the time our office started talking with the CAG, the RFP had either already been issued or was about to be issued. So at that point, the main request was to stop the RFP because that's where we were in the process. I was not attempting to imply that the request was new. I understand that it was a longstanding request. Okay, are there any other questions or clarifications?
Yeah, Lon, thank you for that. We just want to make, I think you're being accurate, yes. We want to make it clear also that when we first met with you and team on Kuehl staff, we were very clear that there was an urgency to it because the submissions in response to the existing RFP were due several weeks after we started meeting. And we had made urgent requests for some actions to be taken at that time. You guys, admittedly, we acknowledge this in the beginning. You inherited this mess. We understand that with the redistricting. Yes. But there was a window, is what I'm saying. There was a window to go do something with the RFP before the responses came in.
Yes, agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the last conversation we had, our staff had informed you that we would take these issues, discuss them with the supervisor, discuss them with the county in-house experts, including county council and DPH, and respond back with the supervisor's stance. And so that's the purpose of today's call. So I'm going to take it, the two main issues being the subpoena and the RFP for the health study one by one. On the first issue of the subpoena, I'm sorry to say that the supervisor will not be pushing forward with an effort to have the county issue such a subpoena. I know that you, up until this point, have not received a clear explanation as to why the county does not believe that such a subpoena is worth pursuing. And I know that you have had a very brief conversation with county council in the past where council really did not offer much. I can tell you that one of the main concerns that has come up within these conversations is that issuing such a subpoena might actually endanger the stability of the current settlement. And that is not something that we are interested in putting at risk. in addition, we've had extensive conversations with the Department of Public Health to hear both their opinion and the shared opinion of the SOC. And it is the supervisor's belief that issuing such a subpoena is not worthwhile and is unlikely to actually produce any additional new useful information. Based upon our prior conversations between 3rd District staff and the CAG, I expect that this will be very disappointing and upsetting news, but I wanted to try to address that request as clearly as possible. So I'll stop now in case you have any questions or comments.
This is Mary Blair. First of all, I wanted to reiterate what Andrew and Craig said, but also it's important to know that there were 2 members on the SOC that CAG was very instrumental in having placed on the SOC and recommended them, and they were medical professionals, doctors, clinicians, and they were removed from the SOC by DPH. So aside from the chemical list, I guess the serious question here would be, how can the community have any faith in a study that is not following the health of the people? And any other study, I'll use the Gulf study as an example, that was overseen by agencies like the NIH, had a list, had evidence of what people were exposed to. No one has evidence of what people were exposed to, and whatever evidence has been put into place for this study has been flawed and has been shown to be erroneous by a number of experts. So the chemical list is, I don't see that the community will bend on this. I understand the explanations, but to all of us and the people that were directly harmed, and to our children and everybody else in the community, we see this as a serious issue, and not obtaining information on what we were directly exposed to makes every single health study and every other question moot, because no one has a clear idea of what people were actually exposed to. So it's foundational. The chemical list is a foundational issue to the community.
Was that Mary? I'm
yeah,
sorry,
it was Mary.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for sharing that. My VPN, my internet connection cut out, so I'm still connected by phone, and I'll try to reconnect my video. But I hear you clearly, and this question of how can the community have faith in the both accuracy and validity of the scientific health study has been a core issue that has been discussed in our office. We've discussed it with the supervisor, and it's been, frankly, a main point of concern for the staff and for the supervisor. But this is one area, I understand what you're saying, and this is one area where I am interested to see how the RFP respondents address that question. And the question being, how can we actually know and then assess what people were exposed to, given that this exposure happened years ago, and we cannot go back in time to do baseline health assessments. I know that there were some CDC studies done at the time, but there is limited data. Now, I'm not a scientific expert. No one in our office is, neither is the supervisor herself. And that is why we are dependent upon the scientific expertise of the SOC and DPH. And it is our hope that the respondents to the RFP process will be able to articulate a study plan that addresses some of these gaps in data. I don't know that anybody will be able to produce a perfect plan, given that we don't have all the data that we would like. But I also, it's our belief at this time that issuing a subpoena endangers things rather more than it actually presents potential benefits.
please explain why it endangers things?
So I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal expert, but it has been explained to us that the idea that by issuing a subpoena, we would essentially be making a statement that we don't have all of the information that we needed, and it could be used as an argument by SoCal to argue that we are somehow in violation of the terms of the settlement, that we are in effect attempting to relitigate an issue that has already been resolved.
So are you talking about the settlement for the consent decree?
I'm talking about the settlement between the county, the city, and SoCal.
So that's the consent
Okay.
decree.
Yes, Patty, that's what you got it right.
Okay. So I just, especially Mary laid out an excellent whole idea that without knowing all the possible materials that we were exposed to and coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak, SoCal Gas, if they gave that whole comprehensive list, that would be the whole list. Without that list, there could be chemicals that could possibly be endangering our lives, and that's what the health study needs to be looking at. What chemicals we were exposed to, and having missing X, Y, and Z, and looking at all these other A through T could be missing some important chemicals. So that's why we've been harping on this subpoena. And as far as we're concerned, it seems like it's more that county council just doesn't want to get in a pissing war, so to speak, with SoCal Gas and not looking out for the whole community at large.
May I jump in? Or Elon, do you want to respond to that?
No, no, I'm sorry. I'm trying to connect again here. So I believe that was Patty who just said that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Patty. No, and is that Andrew who wants to speak?
Yes, but I want to give you an opportunity to respond.
No, I don't really have a response, frankly. I mean, I understand what Patty's saying, and I understand why she is saying that. I don't know that I can offer any more of a rationale other than what I've already offered. But please go ahead, Andrew.
So, Elon, I hear the rationale, and I cannot help but feel that the county, and this is a feeling that's been widely shared and held by community members since the settlement was announced. The fact is, the county screwed the community again when it made this settlement. And it did not go after this list as part of the settlement. Okay. The fact now that the county is hiding behind the settlement again is only continued harm. Okay. I want to understand from you, and I'm trying not to be condescending. If I leak into there, I apologize. 1 + 1 is 2, and 1 + 0 is 1. 1 + 0 could never be 2, no matter how much I want it to be. No matter how many PhDs on the SOC think that we can model an exposure while missing 75% of the constituents to be considered, is quite frankly bullshit. Excuse my French. And an absolute waste of our settlement money. Okay? I don't think anyone on this call can dispute what I just said. I'm missing 75% of the variables of our exposure. There is nothing that any of the health researchers can do to fill in those gaps, period. It renders the study and all of their proposals useless. It's why we have been pushing for the physical clinical evaluations. It is the only methodology available. to try to back into what happened to us. And there is nothing that Dr. Davis is going to tell us today, and there's nothing he would have told you or the supervisor, that any one of us is going to believe there is any logical potentiality that one of the 4 respondents to the RFP is going to do a long-term clinical-based study. None. Because none of the communications that came from DPH to the potential RFP respondents actually tells them that's what anybody wants. And if none of your staff has watched the bidders conference, then I urge you to do so at some point in the next day or two, because that was the latest communication from DPH, and there is no talk at all that anyone wants a long-term longitudinal study anywhere. To think there is a snowball's chance in hell that somebody will randomly come up with that is just completely irrational and illogical.
So I have not yet had a chance to review the bidders conference video, but I will do so within the next few days. You know, I want to make sure that we're clear here. Issuing a subpoena to get the full list of chemicals that were on site at the time of the leak and subsequent attempts to seal the leaks, that actually does not directly equate into an exposure analysis. So just because the chemical list might include information that is not currently available does not actually mean that that data is going to be useful to a research analysis, because we still don't have the baseline data on what pre-existing conditions and pre-existing baseline levels people had, and it doesn't provide a massive gap in the data, which is the early day physical assessments and that kind of information, which unfortunately we can't get at this point. So while I understand and Supervisor Kuehl wishes we had better data, she does not believe that simply pushing to get this subpoena will actually fill all of those gaps in the data. And she does not believe it is worth the risk. We understand that, you know, I think it's actually Mary's first question that is the most troublesome to our office, which is how can the community have faith that the study results are both accurate and complete? And that's one of those questions that we are going to continue to examine as this moves forward. So, I realize that we have not yet had a chance to get to the other main request. And so I want to see if anybody else has further comments or questions about the subpoena, or can we move on to the RFP and the fiscal assessment demand?
Can we talk about the RFP and then come back to both?
No,
afterwards.
sorry.
No,
Brandy, I apologize.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna insist a no on that. Elon, there's a horrible flaw in the statement that you just made regarding the data. The only people that have the composition of the unscrubbed gas that no one can deny we were exposed to for 16 weeks. The only entity that has that composition, because they sampled it, is SoCal Gas.
And captured it on the mesh screens that were capturing the crude oil that was emanating out of there unabated for 16 weeks. They have it.
Yeah.
And that's what was in our air. And that was what we breathed. That was what was in our pools and our children's toys, on our hoods of our cars. No one has that information because no one studied it. And a subpoena would force SoCal Gas in providing that information. And the only ones that can get this are public health agencies. Our plaintiff attorneys cannot get to it because of trade secret. So the only one that can get it is saying no, because we don't want to upset the apple cart of some backroom, smoke-filled, scotch-drinking deal that was done over a handshake. Okay, this community is suffering once again. Elon, as a public health, person, you should appreciate that we are not being protected.
So
That's another way why this subpoena is so important.
Yeah. And I'll add, as you're writing, SoCal Gas knows the competition of all the mud they shoved down the well 7 times. That was all, and how much, and that was spilled out into our community repeatedly. They know that, we don't. So there is a treasure trove of data to be obtained, to be used for modeling, period.
Ask Davis. DPH never, it did an investigation of the crude oil that came out of the well, and that the supervisor's office was made aware of back in December, 2 months into the blowout. That was never investigated, or was a particular matter investigated, which we breathe in our lungs.
I have a clarifying question. You guys just referenced the plaintiff's attorney. So have you already engaged in discovery process in that case, and has it gone to a judge, this issue of determination of whether or not the chemical list is officially trade secrets or not?
Yeah, it's been vetted quite extensively, Elon, and the conclusion was that SoCal Gas can hide behind trade secret, which is just a way the lobbyists were able to get the gas and oil to protect themselves. There is a provision, however, a very clear provision in the California state law that in the cases of public health concerns, a public health entity can pierce that veil. And if this wasn't a public health hazard, then nothing else is. This has been vetted. This has been given to public health. This has been given to Barger's office. Now it's been given to Field's office. And we are beyond comprehension why this isn't happening. This could be separate from the consent decree. The county lacks the political will to do the right thing.
Well, that's something, Craig, that you've said repeatedly, and
it's the only conclusion that makes any sense.
Well, I disagree.
That's certainly
with you.
the way it appears. The public's going to take it that way.
No, I understand that's the way that it looks to you.
We're open to an explanation if you can make one.
Well, I've actually provided the same explanation multiple times so far. You just don't choose to believe it, but that's okay. Frankly, I didn't expect that you would agree with our assessment. But I do have a question. Do you have any a letter either from your lawyer or from the court that speaks to this trade secret that could be punctured by a public health entity? You've explained it verbally, but I'm wondering if you have anything, any kind of official documentation.
Yeah, Elon, we sent it to you in our original PowerPoint. I'll send it to you again. We sent you the code, the law code.
No, I'm speaking to legal correspondence in reference to your plaintiff's case.
Just a moment, Elon.
What did you say? Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, Elon, as far as we're aware, we do not have a legal determination, a written legal determination from plaintiff attorneys.
It's only logical that the plaintiff attorneys would have pursued that because it plays right to damages. So, here right now as we speak, it's only logical that if they had that ability, they would have pursued it. And we were repeatedly told that they didn't get it, and that DPH was the best and quickest avenue to obtain it. Because of the statute of the California state law.
Okay. Okay.
We're ready to
Okay,
move
so are
on.
we-
Finish that, and then we're ready to move on to the clinical.
Okay.
Please.
So hold on one second. Let me just take one more note here. Okay. In regards to the RFP and the health study, as I suggested in an earlier phone call we had, the supervisor is not going to ask DPH to pull back the RFP or to rescind or reissue the RFP with your desired changes. That is because doing so is a very long and tedious process that may not actually alter the results. Now, what I mean by that is from the start, you have heard the DPH staff explain that the RFP respondents are theoretically able to respond with a health study plan that could include physical assessments, medical assessments of the residents. We don't know for certain whether that will happen, and as you have noted, the RFP itself does not require such physical assessments to be a part of the RFP response or the proposed health plan. But it is possible that one of the bidders would, or more than one of the bidders would include it. At this point, the supervisor is not going to ask DPH to reissue the RFP or to change the RFP. We want to see the results of the RFP. We want to see what people propose and whether or not we believe that the responses are appropriate and are strong enough to give us a strong health study. I know, and the supervisor knows, that this will not satisfy the CAG and the community members who have demanded that any health study include a physical assessment component. But that is where we are today, and we are eagerly awaiting the results of the RFP responses.
So if the RFP respondents don't have a proposal that includes clinical health study review and research, would the supervisor commit to pushing back against that proposal?
She is not willing to make such a commitment at this time. We want to see what the bidders actually propose in terms of a health analysis. We do not necessarily believe that the absence of a individual physical assessment component would require us or would merit the full reissuance of the RFP. We want to see what they come back with, and then we'll figure out whether or not the responses are appropriate, whether or not there's one or more health study responses that are sufficient to move forward. But you're asking for a commitment right now that we would.
Yeah. But so just to be clear, so she doesn't feel that
right now to scrap it.
Sure.
Please go ahead.
Sorry. So she doesn't feel it is absolutely necessary that clinical health components be part of the health study, to the point that she won't commit to saying that if they aren't there, that she would oppose this.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I see some other hands raised. I'm not sure if they are new issues or if they haven't gone down before, but I see both Andrew and Mary have questions or comments.
Mary, go ahead.
I just wanted to be very clear because you referenced my name and you know the question I had in the beginning. to say that your comments and assessment and Supervisor Kuhl's comments is disappointing would be a gross understatement. I think this is a betrayal of the community. It is putting people's health, both in the past and in the future, at risk. We have been very clear on these 2 points, and it is unconscionable that elected officials and people that are there to represent community health could stand behind, we can't get, for whatever reason, the chemical list. We can't agree to a health assessment. The reality of that blowout was that people's health was harmed and children's health was harmed. I mean, the statistics of what happened there should cause grave alarm to every single legislator, including Supervisor Kuhl, anybody else. And this is a monstrous betrayal of the community, and it will be seen that way. So be very clear that, to ask the community to trust this, there is no trust now. There's none.
And I'm gonna pile onto that, Elon. There hasn't been any trust, and Mary ended up kind of leading into something that I wanted to reiterate. The area affected neighborhood councils haven't had any faith in the path of this study for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, a year. So what the supervisor is saying, I want to be very, very clear here. The supervisor is saying, I don't care what the community says. I don't care what my local leaders feel. I don't care that we have a massively incomplete data set, which basically precludes us from doing modeling. I don't care that I have an avenue to go get a missing data set, because the $120 million for the settlement, which is peanuts, could very easily be subsidized by a state flush with money. None of those things matter. I'm just going to stand behind my public health department. That is what Supervisor Kuhl is saying. When people in this community are sick,
strongly disagree
die.
with that. But
That's what we're hearing.
I understand, but let me be clear. I think you step too far when you suggest that the supervisor and this office and your Department of Public Health don't care about the worst, oil leak and environmental disaster in Southern California. That is not what we're saying. You are asking for us to pursue very specific remedies, and we don't agree on those remedies. We do agree that there is a massive problem here, that there were serious and significant health concerns and exposures, and we are supportive of investigating them. We don't agree on the proposals that you're making. We don't believe that endangering the legal stability of the settlement with SoCalGas is worth issuing a subpoena. And secondly, we don't agree that it is necessary to revoke the RFP at this point because it did not require a physical assessment from the start. So you can say that of course, if the supervisor has disappointed you in her representation of your families and your communities, you of course are free to say whatever you would like about her ability or her appropriateness in representing you. But I would urge you to seriously consider that a disagreement over remedies is not the same as suggesting that the supervisor and her office do not care about what has happened to your community or the health and safety of your community in the future, because that is a clear concern and a paramount priority for our office. We simply disagree on how to move forward.
I want to say thank you to Alon and Tessa and the office staff, because I recognize that you are messengers who have been handed information from county supervisor and from county council. And I think it's frankly unfair to force one's staff to be the sole bearers of bad news. I think it's unfortunate that she did not choose to tell us the unfortunate news herself, simply because it puts you in what I believe to be an unfair situation to deal with this. But I appreciate that the staff has taken what we said and tried to do your best. And we are obviously disappointed with the response, and this will not be the end of it for, I believe, anybody on here. But I do want to say thank you to the staff for doing the effort and being the messengers in this.
Thank you, Brandy.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, this is Tessa. I just wanted to say that the hope and expectation is that the health study that is conducted is thorough and that the community gets answers, and the supportive health interventions that you need. And the supervisor also, as I noted in an email recently, is very supportive of ultimately shutting down Aliso Canyon. We recognize that this is a not only very difficult and scary for community, but for the earth, and the impacts of climate change overall. So yes, and I just want to support my colleague Elon, who's taken the lead here. And we do have Dr. Davis here, who obviously he's talked to you about sort of the rationale behind a lot of these issues. The clinical assessment in particular, I don't know if that was discussed, but I understood.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, can nobody hear me? Oh, you can. Okay, so I was going to say, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I was saying somebody had their mic on. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I was going to say on the clinical assessment, I recall a discussion about it being less relevant now because people have moved away or because it's been too long, right? And so the impacts of the blowout may have faded in time. So that might be another reason why requiring a clinical assessment may not be prudent, but just wanted you to know that we have heard you. We get it, and Blake and I and Jessica are going to be dealing with you all for many months in the neighborhood councils and that sort of thing, and we want to be supportive of you. But yes, we are passing along the strong message of our supervisor.
Elon and Tesla, this is Gabriel. My concerns right now is the fact that my kids were one of the people who suffered significantly with rashes and body hives and etc. for months. And when we went to the doctor in the beginning, when it all started, they were advised that DPH had sent a letter to them stating that anybody from Porter Ranch, they should not be assessed, that's normal, and be sent home. I'm very concerned about what happens to my daughter, especially, and I'm very concerned about knowing what she was exposed to, because on and off she still gets rashes. We still live in Porter Ranch, and I would like, I don't care about the settlement. It's not a matter of that. Health comes first. I think it's very important, especially for us parents, to know what our kids were exposed to figure out what the long-term effects are going to be. Without any real health study, without anybody knowing what's going on, and no treatment was given to the kids at the time of the blowout, or nothing was looked into because it was just a gas leak in Porter Ranch, don't look at them. I think that was very uncalled for. And the fact that I think it's our full rights to know what our kids were exposed to so we can take action. We can know what to do to prevent any danger in the future. And that's where I stand. It's not, I think health comes before the settlement. I heard you mentioned, it could jeopardize the settlement. It could do this and that. But at the end of the day, our kids are still jeopardized. And I think a lot of people on here, as well as the community, are concerned about that more than the settlement amount. We want to make sure we're healthy. We want to make sure we know what the causes were. We want to make sure what our kids were exposed to so we know what to do next. And the fact that none of that was given before, none of it's being given now, what is next for the kids and what is next for the community?
in meeting with Supervisor Kuehl, Elon and I heard her very clearly that she knows the community was negatively impacted. They're scared, they were harmed, and so we are hopeful that this health study will, be able to provide answers. And you know what? Someone is at my door, and I have to go. So, Elon, please take it over from here. I'll be right back.
Elon, this is Lori.
Yeah.
May I make a point? I was hoping that Tessa could hear this, but I'm a little flabbergasted and disappointed that she would say that maybe there's no use for a clinical assessment because the impacts have probably faded because it's been so long. I mean, the health department could do a simple door-to-door assessment like they did after the well was sealed to find out how many people still had symptoms. My family still has symptoms that we did not have before the gas leak. My daughter still gets bloody noses. We both get terrible rashes. I have asthma. I did not have asthma before the leak. There are health impacts that are still being experienced by those who are affected. Sure, some people gave up and moved away, but there are still thousands of people who live in Porter Ranch who were here during the blowout. There are enough of us that I believe a clinical study could show what is wrong with us or what affected us if we could get the chemical list.
Well, Lori, let me correct either a misstatement or a misunderstanding. Just to be clear, the supervisor did not say that she doubted that a physical assessment or a medical assessment would not be useful. What we said within the office is that it was unclear whether doing complete physical assessments at this time would give us a truly holistic and comprehensive picture of the harms that were caused to the community. And the rationale for that is that we do not have baseline data. And as you noted, Lori, a number of people have moved away. So we're not even going to capture everybody who was impacted or affected by the blowout. To be clear, we do believe that there may be value to doing such an assessment. We just don't know exactly what data it would capture and what it would not capture. And that's why we are waiting to see what the responses are to the RFP and see if any of the bidders propose doing that kind of an assessment. We are not scientific experts within our office, so we don't actually make those kinds of determinations. We're waiting to see what the bid respondents say, and we're relying on the expertise of our scientific experts, both in DPH and the SOC. But Lori, just to be clear, our office and the supervisor knows that people's health was impacted, that many people, like you mentioned, are still experiencing symptoms and health issues that are related to the blowout. We just don't know the best way to capture that, and that's why our office is not making those kinds of decisions. We're looking to the experts to guide us.
Okay, and one other point that I'd like to make is we've been hearing for the past 6 years from everybody that we've begged at every level of government, our plaintiffs' lawyers, anyone that we can get an ear from for that chemical list, and all we hear is why we cannot get it. I would like to see someone, perhaps if you have influence that you could use, and the health department has never broached this idea, like how could it, what other avenue could we use to get that information?
So, Lori, I'm not a legal expert, I'm not a lawyer, but the reason why I was asking earlier about whether or not there was any legal documentation regarding the class action suit is because it's my understanding that you may be able to get such information through the class action suit. Now, obviously, you guys are suggesting that you have been told that that is not an option because the SoCal Gas is going to hide behind trade secrets. I understand that may be a possibility, but I'm not enough of a legal expert to really have an opinion as to whether or not that is still something that you can pursue, or whether the only alternative, as apparently people have told you, is to use a public health entity. So I don't know.
Elon, this is Craig. Lori, I'm sorry, were you done? Go ahead, Lori.
Yes, I'm finished. Thank you.
Are you sure? Elon, I'm gonna take you at your word that the supervisor passionately, I think you used the word passionately, wants to get answers to this community about what the health risks are. So if that is true, then logic would prevail that a clinical evaluation is the only true way to understand the condition of this community. And I 100% disagree with Tessa said about so much time has passed that it may not be relevant. The latency period for the development of cancers is exactly like, because it's been 5+ years. That's when, and that's when the cancers would appear. You're not going to get that sort of realization through what undoubtedly the path that the study is on is a health assessment based upon air monitoring and then a guesstimate of what you were exposed to. Yeah. Hey, Bruce, you mind muting because the background noise. Thank you, Bruce. So the other thing I want to point out is you don't have a complete data set of all the toxins as we've discussed. And even if you did, even if the researchers did have a complete list, there is no medical literature that supports if you were exposed to this much benzene, this much sulfur dioxide, these kind of particular matter. There is no literature that says, therefore, you have these risks. So it is fundamentally flawed, and you don't have to be a PhD to understand that, because you have garbage in, you're going to have garbage out. So the simplest, most effectual, and actually probably the most reasonable cost, and you don't have to examine every person in the area. You have to sample like any good study would, a good, solid representative sample with physical evaluations. So why that logic is not resonating with the supervisor has not been explained to us. And then the last thing is you're waiting.
Well, Craig, Craig, hold on. You guys, this is Elon.
Okay.
You're putting words into the supervisor's mouth because she has not said, and I have not said on this call, that the supervisor does not believe there is any value in doing physical assessments. You have not heard me say that. What I have said is that we are waiting to see if any of the RFP respondents include a physical assessment component in their submissions.
Fair enough.
Your colleagues,
fair enough.
So,
but you're hey, am I on you? Fair enough, Elon. But we have already agreed that the language in the RFP and the verbal conversations with respondents that has no mention of how important clinical evaluations are. So to expect that respondents are going to come back with physical clinical evaluations in their proposal is a farce. And we are certain that that's why the RFP was written the way it was written, because they don't want to answer the question of accuracy.
I'm sorry that that's how you're choosing to interpret the RFP's structure. That is not the belief of our office. We're waiting to see how the RFP submissions come back. And, one of your colleagues earlier asked if the supervisor is willing to commit at this point to revoking the RFP, scrapping the RFP if it does not include a physical assessment component. We're not ready yet. The supervisor is not ready yet to make such a commitment. We want to see what the results come back with, and then we'll assess at that time.
So Elon, if none of the respondents come back with a study that does any clinical evaluation at all, what are you guys then going to do? So you get a report back from DPH. We have our 4 RFPs. They're all modeling. What is then your contingency plan in the office and with the supervisor?
I'm not really ready yet to make such a conjecture because that situation has not come to pass. I have not asked that question of the supervisor, that specific question of what are you going to do if nobody comes back with a proposal for a physical assessment component. So I can't, I understand the question and I'm sorry, I'm just not able to answer it. The supervisor has been very clear with us and with DPH. We're waiting to see what the responses come back with. I understand that that does not answer your direct question, but we're not able to answer it yet. Let's see what they come back with.
So I guess then the follow-up is to Dr. Davis. The RFP submissions are in. How quickly can DPH inform the supervisor's office and the CAG on the sole question of, did any of the respondents include physical clinical examinations? That's the only piece of data to share. How quickly can that be done?
I have to go back and look at the timeline in terms of where they are in that process. But I think, there are questions in terms of what we can actually talk about if it hasn't already been assessed in terms of the RFP process. And I'll have to check with contracts and grants in relationship to that.
So how quickly can you check and how quickly can an answer?
I don't have an answer for you.
So we are running out of time. It's almost 3 o'clock. I see Brandy has her hand up. Are people able, Lon, are you able to stay on for an extra minute or two?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Brandy, go ahead.
Thank you. Is there any way that the CAG can be involved in helping to review the proposals? The submitted proposals?
Brandy, we already asked for that. That was denied.
Well, I'm asking now.
No, the answer is no. We've discussed that request with the supervisor as well, and it is not part of county practice to engage community stakeholders in that kind of a way. So I realize that that's a disappointing response, but that is our response.
Is there then any way that we can, I assume from what you've said, and correct me if I'm wrong, the supervisor is going to look at the proposals. Is there any way we can work with your office that way to help with her assessment on the proposals?
So standard RFP process allows, hold on one second. Dr. Davis, I don't know if you remember. I know we asked the question. I cannot remember at this point if the RFP results are going to be put in front of the board for a board vote on issuing the contract. Do you remember, Dr. Davis?
I believe it does come to the board ultimately to approve. I'll double check to make sure.
Yeah, I think it does as well. But yeah, if you could double check that, Dr. Davis, I'd appreciate it. So just to explain why I'm asking the question, any contract that the board is asked to vote on, it comes to the board in a public meeting, a public and transparent meeting that would offer an opportunity for public to make comment. You can make both written submissions of testimony and oral testimony. So that would be an opportunity for you to provide input to the board, both our office and our colleagues, as to whether or not you believe the county should issue a contract with the proposed vendor or study group. I realize that was a lot of bureaucratic language, but
no,
please ask me to clarify if it didn't make sense.
It was clear. Thank you.
So Elon, how many times has a group given public comment on a proposed contract and into the negative and actually had the board of supervisors then deny the contract?
So, that's a really good question. I would say that the earlier you provide that analysis, the better and more effective it is. And it's simply a matter of timing, right? Give the board, both our office and our colleagues, a chance to read your and hear your comments earlier in the process is always better. Testimony provided at the meeting when the board is actually taking a vote, it doesn't offer a whole lot of opportunity to for the board to change tacks. So if assuming that Dr. Davis is correct, and I think he is, that this contract eventually has to come before the board, it also will come before a group of board office staff, which is myself and my colleagues, the fellow health policy advisors. It'll come to that group at least 2 weeks before it goes to the board. So that's actually a much more ideal opportunity for you to make public comment and share your opinion before it actually goes to the board for a vote.
Can we ask for a
you know,
courtesy? Could we ask for a commitment from you personally for a courtesy email to us when it comes before you personally, so we can respond?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
and to be clear, we refer to them as health deputy meetings. So those are meetings for the health deputies. Those are considered Brown Act compliant public meetings as well. So we have to agendize those, including all topics, at least 72 hours in advance. So, you know, that's not a problem at all. We will have sufficient advance posting, and I will make sure that your group receives notification in advance so that you can attend that meeting. Those meetings right now are still being held virtually, but you can join and make comment. And I know, Dr. Davis, it looked like you had a comment or a question.
Yeah, to the question of whether or not the contract comes to, or the award comes to the board, it does before it's finalized and approved. So it does go to the board. Okay. So there is a chance for public comment.
Yeah, so there are two opportunities there for public comment. One is at the health deputies meeting, and then several weeks later at the public board meeting. But I would recommend that you target that health deputy meeting because it is earlier in the process, and it affords you a better opportunity to actually share your opinion in a more informal and relaxed setting. It's easier to hear those kinds of comments and concerns at that time.
Thank you.
And I'm committing to making sure that you guys have an advance copy of the agenda as soon as possible, so that you know when it's coming up.
And then really quickly, we wouldn't be able to provide any details about proposals or summary of proposals during the RFP process.
So no one's going to know whether there was any inclusion of clinical exams until it goes to the board.
Yeah, it's a closed process, Andrew. We talked about that before.
Right. So Elon, there's no way for us to know anything until the end, which means when it's too late is the point. Thank you, Dr. Davis, for confirming that.
I don't know that that's entirely accurate. Just to clarify, at some point in this process, the Department of Public Health will be making a recommendation for entering into a contract with a specific bidder. That bidder can, at that point, disclose their proposal study structure at that point. So Dr. Davis is unable to share information right now because they're still in the RFP evaluation process, and doing so could present legal liabilities for the entire process. But the selected recommended bidder, once that bidder is made public, they can share that kind of information. And and I can assure you that those questions, like how is the study going to be conducted, those are the questions that I'm going to be asking at the health cluster meeting, the health deputy meeting that I just referenced. Mary, it looks like you have a question or a concern. Mary, are you there?
To unmute. I just have a comment, and I'm sure this is alarming, but it is something that people are concerned about. And it goes back to what the discussion was at the beginning about cancer and very specific and bloodborne types of cancers. And there was recently a story in the news, which I'm sure you all have heard of, where there is a school in New Jersey that 20 years later, people are having very specific types of cancer and brain tumors, and the numbers of how many people are affected are alarming. And these are the kinds of things, and as an educator for many years, that our children are going to be subjected to. And I am extremely concerned from the beginning of this meeting. And I would like you to convince me otherwise, but I feel like SoCal Gas is driving the bus for the legislators and the people that are concerned about the health of our community, because there is no concern if SoCal Gas is driving the bus, meaning that they are in charge of, oh, we can't provide a chemical list because it affects this and this and this. It is very convoluted and untruthful, and it is, like I said at the beginning, a betrayal of the community, because it is not getting to the root of the cause of what people were exposed to and what they were affected by. And to say that you don't have data from the beginning, that's not the community's fault. That's because Southern California Gas was driving the bus for the people that were charged with making sure that people's health was not marginalized. And believe me, people's health was marginalized. So to ask us as CAG to represent, all this information to the community, people are going to see it just like I mentioned just now. What's going to happen to us in 20 years? What's going to happen to my children in 20 years? Because no one is getting the answer now.
This is Brian Allen. I want to thank Mary for giving me the analogy of the bus, because what has happened is Southern California has driven the bus over the community. And all of the remarks that we have heard today based on communication of the staff, of Sheila Kuehl's staff, and representing her, are, in my estimate, and I don't apologize for anything I'm saying, is complete and utter nonsense. It's bullshit. And we ask you if you'll be concerned about patient-centric study, and you're waiting until results are in. And what you're going to say at the end of that is, oh, the scientists who are on these studies have determined that it's not necessary. So you don't even have the balls to stand up and be counted for the community. The community is suffering, has suffered, people have died. The only agency in this city, this county, that is responsible for that now is DPH, because they didn't step in. They didn't have the concern for the public. They had the concern for their paycheck. They had the concern for this settlement, but nowhere is it ever been shown that DPH cared about the people and the health. And now your staff, her staff, Sheila Kuehl's staff, and Sheila Kuehl are just complicit in that. As far as I'm concerned, I'm writing the whole thing off. I'll go a different road. It is not appropriate what is happening here. And anybody that listens to this recording will draw the same conclusion. I'm 74 years old, and I have heard all these arguments and all these explanations before, and it is all a cover-up. That's my opinion, and I dare anyone to convince anybody other than me that it's not true. There is nothing that's ever been done to satisfy the community. And you guys will not be the ones that start here. Bye.
Well, I'm not really sure what else to say at this point. I'm sorry that both you and Mary feel the way that you do. I think at this point, I have tried to explain, and Tessa and I have tried to share the supervisor's opinion and rationale for her positions just about as best we can. I realize that none of you agree with them, and many of you believe that they are insincere, and it's regrettable that you feel that way. I have committed to ensuring that you guys are aware.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to make a very succinct point. This is Brian again. Fact, if Sheila Kuehl had any decency, she would have at least introduced herself in person to us at one of these meetings. She would have had the decency and the integrity to confront us directly, but she didn't even have that. Take that one for me, please.
Okay. At this point, I've committed to making sure that you guys are all informed of when the next opportunity is for an open public conversation about the recommended vendor or recommended research group that DMH will be proposing to the board. And I will make sure that you guys are aware of when that will be coming up, so that if you choose to, you can both submit public comment and join in that meeting. I think we are now over a quarter of an hour past our scheduled time, and I think we've tried to address every comment and question up until this point. So I think at this point, it's best if we adjourn the meeting. But if you have any other questions or concerns, that you're still welcome to email us, and hopefully we can address them. So thank you for your time, for your patience, and thank you, Dr. Davis, for joining us today and for getting that answer quickly about whether or not this will be a publicly agendized contract discussion. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.